Well, time now to invite our next guest, Fireside Ventures, which has created quite a name for backing consumer good companies. And remember, direct-to-consumer has been a big trend that emerged in the COVID-infected 2020. Fireside Ventures, which has backed the likes of MamaEarth, Vadham Teas, Sarva Yoga, Boat Headphones. Kanwaljit, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of StartUpCentral. 2020, what a heck of a year it has been. But as we head into 2021, it's not been as bad as we thought, let's say, in the month of March.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if I may be even more optimistic, it actually turned out pretty good for several of our companies. So I think there was some silver lining in at least our business. I'm happy to share more about that.
Okay, so now let's get into the specifics. If you look at your portfolio, what's hot and what are the trends you're expecting for 2021?
So, what we have seen as a significant, I would say, change in the overall consumption patterns and the way, consumers are evaluating and buying consumer brands is two big factors, right? One is, of course, the whole growing opportunity for digital first e-commerce brands which are catering through the digital route. And that obviously becomes a very big theme for us. We have always invested in the digital first e-commerce brands, but it's becoming more mainstream. I guess partly it was enforced because of the lockdowns and the unwillingness of people to go into physical retail, but now it's become a habit. And second big thing that happened was that, the heightened sense of awareness around what you are consuming, whether you're consuming food and beverages, what you're putting on your body, and therefore, the need to be trusted, the need to be in the right, paradigm of how the consumers are comfortable in consuming different brands. And that again played in the hands of some of our brands because they were all targeting, these new narratives of, let's call it natural, organic, less chemical, less preservatives, etc. So those were the macro, I would say, changes that we saw. And the third piece that really, fell into place was the whole consciousness of consumers around health, wellness, nutrition, and in general, well-being. So to answer your question about future trends, clearly wellness is a overarching theme for us. Whether it's digital health, whether it's yoga, whether it's food and nutrition, immunity. So the entire gamut of consumption which caters to a wellness theme across different sectors becomes one very big opportunity for us to invest in. And obviously, e-commerce and digital first becomes the platform on which to build these brands.
So is that going to be the trend for 2021 as well, especially when we talk about consumer goods, healthy, wellness, and what you're saying, with a hint of premiumization?
Yes, indeed. That's always been our focus, is to target what we call the millennial generation. And they are obviously looking for more choices, looking for, better stories, better narratives around brands. And this plays absolutely in the middle of that. So therefore, whether it's, like you said, organic or natural, but I would add Ayurveda has become a big theme now. Not only in India, we have brands which are selling Ayurvedic products in global markets. Nutrition and, clean label, all natural, no preservatives has become another big theme. So yes, I think the opportunity is immense. And I think what we started seeing in the last 5 years as a trend towards these young new age brands, I think is now becoming more and more mainstream.
So, what we also saw in 2020 was a lot of people following their passions, becoming home bakers, home chefs, and they really put themselves out there, selling to others in their localities, all of that. Many of them have now decided that this is their passion and this is what they want to do. And that always is sometimes the genesis of a startup. In your portfolio, if I look at MamaEarth, that's how it started out. They just didn't want their kids to have, for example, use products that have chemicals in it. So all these people who have decided to follow their hobby during the lockdown and now want that to be their main business and their main source of income, what's your advice to them?
No, I think it is certainly a legitimate area of focus. We have a brand called Tasty Tales, which caters to this exactly, cook from home, ready to cook kind of curry in paste and so on. So therefore, these, let's call it experiences at home, has become a very big opportunity. And how do you cater to them at the local community level is the other area that we have seen emerge. Even people like Swiggy and Dunzo and others have started now catering to local deliveries. Food is getting built in a community concept. There are companies now which allow you to put up your home recipes and for the local community to put up their interest, and then you cook for that particular requirement on the next day. So I would say certainly at a very micro level, this is emerging as almost you can call it hyper local, you can call it a very very community specific ideas. Now, obviously, if you have to build a larger business around it, then you have to start thinking of more channels like Amazon, Flipkart, Big Basket, Nykaa, etc. But starting with this local community as the initiative and building on top of that actually is a pretty good idea. And we are seeing a lot of companies, or at least some of these specialists from home, starting to cater to that.
But what about scalability? We're also talking at a time, and look what's happening with what happened with the Burger King IPO. Mrs. Bector, another such a hot, big story when it's coming to the IPO space. So there are a lot of brands out there that have the potential to really scale up.
Surely, why not? I think, again, it's a question of what the mindset of the entrepreneur is and what they are trying to achieve. Because to scale up, then you have to start thinking of bigger distribution channels. And today, people like Amazon and Flipkart, etc., offer you a very, very good platform to reach, not only regional but even national level access. In fact, Amazon is now promoting their global sales business, which is to take Indian brands internationally. So I think the building blocks are there, the infrastructure is there. Then it's a question of what your personal ambitions are, what you're trying to build. Not every company or every entrepreneur necessarily even wants to build IPO businesses. So what is the definition of scale will decide how much you want to take it to the next level. But infrastructure and the building blocks are there for sure.
Direct to consumer, a big trend that started in 2020. Do you think it'll spill over into 2021? Is this the way to go? It allows brands to directly engage with their consumers, get real-time feedback, do customization, but therefore it also means you have to do your own marketing, you have to figure out your own logistics.
So certainly it's a big trend. I totally agree. We have seen not only our companies, but overall that there is a very heightened interest in that. And I think it's sustainable up to the point where you are willing to, again, focus more on the building blocks, because the tools exist. You can easily build your own website and integrate it, say Shopify, which is a very easy and a quick start kind of a tool. Companies like Delivery, companies like ShipRocket, a lot of the logistics companies are now specifically catering to young startups and helping them with their logistics and their supply chain requirements. So then the question remains marketing. And that is really the big question, because initially customer acquisition for D2C is obviously a little more expensive than.
Now let me come and talk to you about your fund and Fireside at large. You still have capital left to be deployed. What are you planning for the new year?
Yes, absolutely. So we are investing from our second fund, which is targeted for $100 million plus kind of a number. We already announced our first close. So we are in capital, we have dry powder, and we are actively investing. So far, we have done 3 deals from this fund, plus we had done 18 from the earlier fund. So it's a fairly decent sized portfolio. So like I said, next year, I would call it, if I may be a little cliched, a year of hope. I think hopefully the clouds of COVID are starting to dissipate, the vaccines coming in, with consumers accepting a new normal, a new way of life. And consumer brands has always been an exciting theme. And therefore, I think we will only see much more of what we have been doing in the last few years. So 2021 could promise to be actually a very, very exciting year for consumer brands.
Now, you have started the interview by talking to me about the changing consumer behavior. We've all heard in 2020 how it takes 3 weeks to form a new habit. So we know about the changing consumer behavior. What about the changing investor behavior? Did we see that change in 2020?
That's a great question. Yes, it did. I think the first 6 months were circumspect. Like everybody else, investors were also more uncertain and to some extent wary. I think certainly, existing portfolios, especially companies which were high burn companies, were into survival mode. Investors were far more focused on ensuring that those companies and their portfolio was healthy, and whatever they needed to do to either bring them to profitability or inject a little more cash. So I would say up till maybe June, July, it was still quite circumspect. After that, once you started seeing some of these green shoots, the e-commerce businesses started picking up. We started seeing, traction, and even other digital platforms like, for example, digital health, online education. Some of these service areas suddenly became, obviously mainstream because these were the only viable options. So investor interest has been peaking pretty actively over the last few months, and of course, globally, you have seen some of these IPOs, get into, really bumper pickups even on the day of launch. So yes, I would say we are certainly back to COVID. If I may be even more optimistic, probably even ahead of where we were pre-COVID, because there are some very identified spaces where I think there'll be even more stronger activity as far as investing is concerned.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're completely out of time. Many thanks for tuning into this edition of the Startup Central. See you same time tomorrow.